This is Dr. B, host of The Dr. B Show and founder of Borja Consulting Group, a company that helps businesses grow through strategy, branding, and marketing. Today's guest is Louis Barajas, one of America's first Latino Certified Financial Planners, best-selling author, and nationally recognized wealth advisor. With over 40 years of experience, he's helped countless families build generational wealth. Today, he shares the mindset shifts and financial lessons that can change your future.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Dr. B Show. I'm here with the great Louis Barajas. Luis, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Dr. Borja?
Thank you. Doing awesome today. Awesome today, man. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into it. Tell everyone about yourself.
Yeah, well, listen, I am an old guy. I've been around for a long time. I'm considered one of the first Latino certified financial planners in the country, if not the first. I'm the first ever to be on the national board, first first minority ever to be on the National Financial Planning Association board. I am currently the first Latino on the National Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards. I have been on over the years. I have written 6 books now. I just got my 6th book out, which actually comes out July 15th, called Finances con Corazón, The Latino Journey to Financial Dignity. I've written with HarperCollins, Thomas Nelson. I am currently on the television PBS series called Opportunity Knocks with Gene Chatsky and Patrice Washington. I have been on CNN. I was a regular on National Public Radio. I had my own show on here on CBS on KCAL/CBS. In Los Angeles. I had my own column on La Opinión, which is the largest Latino newspaper in the country for years. And my claim to fame was that I grew up in Boyle Heights in the barrio in East Los Angeles, made it out. Ended up, out of just by chance, ended up working with multimillionaires and billionaires in the 80s, did a lot of consulting, did a lot of financial planning work, and I had personal tragedy strike in 1990. I had my grandmother who helped raise me, die unexpectedly of a heart attack. A few weeks later, my uncle, who got me out of the barrio by buying me books, commit suicide. And then my daughter was born a few weeks later. So everything happened. Like my grandmother dies, my uncle commits suicide, my daughter's born. And the day that my daughter's born, I meet a guy at a coffee shop. I stopped off to get a cup of coffee and a bagel, and I meet some guy randomly who just walks in and asks to sit next to me. And I asked him if he could wait 30 seconds. I had to rush back to the hospital because I hadn't eaten. And he thought that something was wrong with my daughter, but I was putting cream cheese on a bagel, and I was thinking about how my daughter was never going to meet my grandmother or my uncle, the two people who outside of my parents had really influenced me the most. And we had a long conversation. And it's on September 8th, 1990 at Lake Forest at the Renaissance Cafe there. It's emblazoned in my memory. And this guy told me stuff that I hadn't heard ever. I went back to the hospital. My parents showed up from East LA. I was in Newport Beach, California. And I told my dad, hey, I just met a guy at a coffee shop that just changed my life. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go back to the barrio. And I did. I quit my job on 3 days later, went back to the barrio. Now, I was doing national big consulting projects. I was working again with billionaires and multimillionaires, and I was working on some high profile cases in East Los Angeles. In New York and Phoenix before I went back. And so I would get a lot of press coverage. And so I left. I quit my job, went back to East LA to go open up a financial planning practice there. And the news looked for me in Newport Beach, and they said, no, he quit. He went back to where he grew up to go help his community with finances. And they couldn't believe it. So it took some of them like a year to 2 years to find me because I had no forwarding address, nothing. And they did. And then I got some big write-ups in the paper, and my life changed. And so that was back in 1991. And so I've been writing books since 2000 with HarperCollins, and because of this guy that I met at a coffee shop that changed my life, it's been a journey. And again, I just wrote my last book, which is this one right here, and it is my legacy book, the one that's taken me 40 years to write. So I'm really, really excited to get the book out. So that's just a short story. The next question you should ask me: who's that guy that I met at the coffee shop?
Yeah, who was the guy you met at the coffee shop?
Okay, so quick story. So HarperCollins, I ended up writing my book, getting it published with HarperCollins back in 2000, I think 2002. And they fly you to New York to meet the marketing team. So they'll fly up several authors, and then the night before they'll have like a wine and cheese and hors d'oeuvres, and everybody meets. But the next day you have meetings with the marketing team because you're going to talk to them about your book because the marketing team's going to get it. Back then, remember, we had tons and tons of bookstores, right? Barnes and Noble, not that we don't have those anymore. And they would market the book for you and whatever. Well, the night before at that event, I see a guy who looks just like the guy that I saw like a decade earlier at the coffee shop at the Renaissance Cafe. And I see the guy and I go, hey, you look really familiar. You remind me of a guy that changed my life. In fact, I'm here because of that guy. But imagine that you and I have this conversation today and we don't see each other for the next, I don't know, 20 years, but we meet in person, but in Orange County, California. And then now, 10 years later, you're in New York and I'm in New York, but there's a lot of guys that look like me, a lot of guys that look like you. But you resembled. And I said, and I said, do you remember me? And he goes, no. And he says, oh, okay. Well, the guy that I met was in Orange County, California. I told him that my grandmother had died. My uncle had committed suicide. My daughter was born that just hours earlier. And he goes, oh my God, I do remember that story. And he says, and I said, where do you live? And he goes, Orange County, California. It was in Lake Forest. And I go, it's you. You changed my life. You're the guy. And I said, oh my God, what are you doing here? And I said, do you work for HarperCollins now? And he says, no, I wrote a book with HarperCollins. I'm here because of marketing too. Oh my God, because I'm here for the same reason. It's just what's the irony? How ironic is that we're here together? I said, what book did you write? And he says, well, my name is Rick Warren. I wrote a book called A Purpose-Driven Life. Now, Dr. Borja, if you haven't read his book, he sold, I think it's 38 million copies already of this book. I mean, his book was the biggest. I mean, I couldn't go anywhere, travel on vacation for years when I would see people going to the beach with his book, right? Walking with his book. So he wrote a book called A Purpose-Driven Life. And it's a life-changing book. He was a pastor back then of a really small church that had dirt floors, and it was under a tent, and then became one of the biggest major churches in America. But if you saw Barack Obama's first inauguration, they do a prayer, they do an invocation. Well, that was Rick Warren who did the invocation for Barack Obama's first inauguration. That's how big he got. And it was him who changed my life. And one of the things that he said that, he had been he was a pastor of a very small church and worked with really had parishioners that were very poor and also very wealthy, but you never knew. But he would do ceremonies at funerals. And one thing he knew for sure, whether you were rich or you were poor, he had never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. You're not going to take anything with you in life. And so when I went back to the barrio, and remember back then, you're a young guy still, but back then in 1990 or 91, there was no internet. There were no iPhones. There was no, a chat GBT. There was nothing. And Latinos, there was a huge wealth disparity. And where I grew up in the community that I grew up, we had over 50% high school dropout rate. And 60% of Latinos in my community were unbanked. And so I started, I went to UCLA, got my MBA, studied with Peter Drucker, became one of the first, if not the first Latino CFP in the country. And everybody said, oh, it's the lack of financial literacy, the lack of financial literacy, the lack of knowledge. Well, when I went back to the barrio, I realized, holy shit, literacy is not going to help a community. I forgot what it was to be poor. I grew up extremely poor, made it out because of books. And as you can tell how much I love to read back here, right? Made it out because of books, become very successful, work with billionaires and multimillionaires. And then I go back to the barrio and then I realize with all this education and all this financial education, I'm going to change this barrio. I couldn't do it. It was overwhelming. And then I realized, oh my God, financial literacy is not the answer for communities that are underserved or marginalized. It was about the mindset. And that's where my story starts. And that's why I end up writing the book called The Latino Journey to Financial Greatness, which is my very first book, which is about overcoming limiting cultural beliefs about money. And how I got to that point was that I saw back in 1988, 89, I saw a guy named George Lopez, a comedian, at the Ice House. Now, this is before he became famous. This is when I think he might have been at the time when he was like down and out. But I saw him do a comedy routine that was 3 or 4 minutes on Latinos and money that was so hard hitting, so hard, so rough that if like somebody else said it, they would be racist. But he said it because he grew up poor as well. we all laughed. We laughed so hard. And then I realized, oh my God, maybe the way I'm going to get through certain people is to tell a lot, be a storyteller, like he was, to be a storyteller and talk about money in ways that most people aren't talking about. I'm not going to talk about budgets. I'm not talk about credit. I want to talk about why Latinos are doing the things that they're doing to keep themselves poor and what limiting cultural beliefs they have about money. And that's what the book's about. The Latino Journey to Financial Greatness was the first section of the book was all the isms that were holding us back, and then there was some financial literacy on the second part of the book. That's a long story, right? I think it took 10 minutes to tell my story, but I wanted people to get the essence of what I do and who I am. And now, over the years, I have grown where I turned that one company into 5 companies. I'm also known as, and I'll stop there before you can ask me other questions. But I'm also known as, I have a company called Business Management Lab with my wife. We've got a lot of employees. We are one of the top Latino business management firms in the entire country that handles Latino entertainers, highly iconic musicians, actors, performers, and executives in the entertainment industry.
I love
Was
it.
that a lot?
Wow. What
Was that a
amazing.
lot?
That was fantastic. Which segues into my next question, right? So how'd you get into that line of work, as a wealth and business manager? How'd you actually get into that? Was it from the gentleman you
Yeah,
met?
well, what happened, let me just share with you. So where it starts with you are the son of Mexican immigrants and you love books and you love to read, and your dad loses 2 jobs back in 1971, 1972, and he takes all the money that he has saved, and tells my mom, hey, listen, I'm going to take our rent money and I'm going to bet it, I'm going to buy a welding machine. He had lost his jobs. The US was going through recession, and he buys a welding machine to start an ornamental iron business. Or that's like they make window. My dad made window guards, custom wrought iron doors. Because when you grow up in poor communities, there's a lot of crime, and people have window guards in their windows so people don't break in, right? And they have custom made security doors and they have fences. And so my dad started that business, and I helped him out. We were like really, really poor. And so when he started the business, he started it out of the garage of the house, and then finished. So about a couple of years later, was able to move into a small little place in East LA on Whittier in Indiana. Next block over is Calzona, and his building, his little place was in the back. My dad eventually ends up buying that building and the building right next to it. Um, but 2 years later, I'm there with my dad, sweeping up the shop floor, and the IRS showed up to the office, and they asked Mr. Barajas if he was there. My dad goes to them in very limited broken English, and they asked him if he had filed tax returns. It was an IRS agent, and because they didn't have no record of him filing business tax returns, I guess they were walking up and down East LA asking these business owners. And my dad called me over and he said, like, what is she saying? And I'm saying, I'm sorry, ma'am. I said, my dad doesn't really speak English. How can I help you? And he said, well, I'm the IRS agent. Your dad has to pay taxes. All I asked the lady is there a book on how to prepare taxes? And she said, yes. And the reason why I said, I had an uncle who used to buy me books, and the one that committed suicide. And I made out of the Bible because of him. So I asked her, so my dad drove me from Boyle Heights to Hacienda Heights. If people are familiar with Los Angeles, which is about, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 miles away, because there were no bookstores back there in East LA. And just so you know, Dr. Borja, there is no bookstore in Boyle Heights as of last night. So he drove me out. I bought this really thin book that the tax book probably was like this. Now the tax books look like this now. Check this out. They look like this now, right? But they
Yeah,
were like
yeah,
this then.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I read the entire book. And you would go to the post office, and that's where you get the tax forms. See, I told you you're too young to remember. That's where you would get your tax forms, and you would do them in ink. I did it in pencil, and I filed my dad's tax return, sent him out. That's at the age of 13. Now, at the age of 15, my dad gets audited for those tax returns. All right, he gets audited for them. And we go to the fourth floor of the Almonte office, the IRS office. I'm shaking like a leaf because they've called my dad for an audit. And I had some jerky friend who basically said, well, I hope you don't go, your dad doesn't go to jail because of you. And I go, well, why? He goes, well, there's this guy named Al Capone who killed a lot of people in Chicago, but he never went to jail for that. He went to jail for paying his taxes. And so I'm like, but what the hell I do? I'm from East LA, man. I don't know anything. So I'm thinking my dad's going to go to jail, and I'm like stressing out. We take the elevator up. We sit in front of an angel IRS agent who looks at our tax return and asks Mr. Barajas, my dad, because I didn't sign him as a preparer. And he says, who filed your tax returns? And then she goes, he says, my son did. And so she asked me, he goes, how old are you, son? He goes, I'm 15. And he goes, well, these returns are 2 years old. You would have been 13. There's no way you did these tax returns. Mom, did I do them wrong? Please don't. If my dad has to go to jail, I'll go to jail for him. I remember this. She started cracking up. And she said, well, how would you have known how to depreciate a welding machine? I said, ma'am, well, I read a book, and under the depreciation, it said that if you bought the welding machine in September, like 16th, you would count half the month, and then you would count the months in front of it, and then you could take that divided by whatever. And that's what the form 4562 said. And she looked at me, she looked at my dad, she goes, I think your son knows what he's doing. And she just checked and moved some papers around, and she looked at us and she said, okay, you can go, no change. And we left. I swear I was sweating. I was a stinky, pimply 15-year-old kid from high school. I said, Dad, I got to learn everything there is about financial planning and taxes and to help you out with your business. And I'm going to have to go to college one day. And that was my goal. And I ended up going to UCLA, getting my degree there, then going and getting my master's at Claremont Graduate School, studying when Peter Drucker was there. If you guys don't know who Peter Drucker, if you're listening to this and you don't know who Peter Drucker is, please Google Peter Drucker, okay? The father of business. And I went into financial planning. And Dr. Borja, it was the worst thing ever. I had a friend who, when I was in grad school, was in financial planning, and he knew all about stocks and bonds, and I wanted to learn that. So I took all the exams and licenses to become a not a financial planner at the time. It was more of a broker to sell stocks and bonds and work for a big financial planning firm. And I was helping out the community back then. I was helping them open up checking accounts, savings accounts. As I told you, they were unbanked. Latinos were unbanked. And they had a chat with me and they said, hey, you're not really making much money because you got to sell product. And financial planning is about selling products. And if, I said, yeah, but they don't have a savings account. And we were taught that you should have an emergency reserve first, and they should open up in their checking account or savings account. And go, why don't you put them in an annuity? That would probably be the best thing for them and for you too. Well, I go, but that's a 5% commission, when back then they were only earning like 3 or 4%. And I said, but that doesn't sound right. Why would I do that to somebody? That's not right. And he goes, well, you're not going to make it in this industry if you're not going to be selling product. And so I left the industry. That's why I went to go to this big firm in Newport Beach, where I was working with all the multi-millions and billionaires, to go get my CPA license. And I said, financial planning is BS. It's all a facade just to sell product. And I left the industry. And I said, one day I would love to help this community out or help my parents out. But when I went to Newport Beach, they found out that I was in the financial planning program, the CFP program. CPA firms back then could not sell product by law. And so we had clients that were really wealthy. And so they had me do now financial plans for some of our wealthiest clients. And this is back in the 80s, we were charging $25,000 for a plan. And I thought, man, I could do these plans for almost nothing if I went back to East LA. Well, again, little did I know that years later I was going to go back to everything that happened. I ended up going back and doing financial plans pretty much for nothing. And that's kind of how I got started in the wealth. Now, how did I end up being the business manager? Most people don't know what a business manager is. So my wife and I and our team, we pay the bills for entertainment clients, big musicians, and iconic international Latino musicians. We pay their bills. We do all their tour accounting. We do all their international tax returns. We buy their homes, help sell their homes. We hire their nannies, fire their nannies, help them get their jets, have them buy their Bentleys. We negotiate their watches. We are everything that has to do with finances, insurance, investments. I currently, with another partner on the investment side, manage almost close to $300 million for our clients. And I got there because in the third book that I wrote, my next door neighbor used to work for Hyundai. And I thought he used to sell cars. Well, I didn't know that he was the global marketing person for Hyundai. And he came to me one day, and in my very first book, the paperback version of this book had my picture on the cover. And he walked up and knocked on my door and he goes, is this you? And I said, yeah. He goes, you didn't tell me you wrote books. And he goes, you know what I do? I go, yeah, you sell Hyundai cars. He goes, no, dummy, I'm the head of global marketing for Hyundai. We're doing a commercial in English with Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman. We're going to do one in Spanish. And my team did a national search for the top two people. And there's a lady named Julie Stav and Louis Barajas. And then they showed me a picture on the book and they go, hey, I think that's my neighbor. And Julie Stav was Cuban American, had a radio show on Univision, I think. And they said, buddy, I said, we want, I think it was 67% back then of the Latinos were Mexican American. I said, we'd love for you, your first shot. If you want to do do you speak Spanish? He goes, seguro que sí. And we did the commercial. Well, the actress in that commercial helped me out. It was my very first national commercial. Her name, was Sandra Cruz, who was married to a gentleman named Nir Shirusi, who ends up becoming the president of Sony Music Latin. And he becomes a client, and he's like I call him compadre, and she's my sister. She's like they say my sister from another mister. And he had some people get ripped off on the business management side. Some business managers were unscrupulous. And he says, listen, I trust you guys. I'll teach you everything. He's been a godsend to us. He taught us the entertainment industry world and more the music world. It's very, very hard to learn because he trusted us, my wife and I, so much. And so that's how I got involved. And so, like I said, now, I mean, I'm talking to celebrity clients all across, from US, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Venezuela. I mean, we have all sorts of young clients, older clients, very iconic clients. And that's what I do all day. Plus, but at the same time, besides writing and speaking and being in the industry at a national level, my whole work has been, how do I get Latinos into the financial planning industry to do the right thing? How do I get Latinos who are not doing the right thing in the financial planning industry to do the right thing? And how do I help underserved and marginalized communities? And we do that. At our firm, I am gonna, like this early morning, I met with somebody who's making a 21-year-old that's making 15 million. Later on this afternoon, around 4:30 in the afternoon, I'm gonna be meeting with a husband and wife and their abuelita who lives in East LA, and I'm going to be helping her out, who makes maybe, I think, just she makes Social Security. We don't turn anybody down. We help people who want to be helped. And that's one of the things that we basically focus on our firm, is that if they want to be helped, and Dr. Borja, I learned one lesson in life when I went back to the barrio, is that you can't help everybody. You can try to help everybody, but you just can't help everybody, even if you want to. Not everybody's ready to be helped or wants to be helped.
I love it. I love it, man. Totally love it, man. Thank you for that clarification of the wealth and business manager. That's awesome. Tell me about the book, your new book, Financing con Corazón. It's coming out July 15. Why Write book numero 6.
Yeah. So, okay, so one of the things is that I have a partner named Daniel Guillen on the investment side called International Private Wealth Advisors. And he said, hey, listen, what would you like your legacy to be? I said, when do you plan to retire? I said, well, I'm not going to retire because I love what I do. And I've created a job for myself that I get to do what I love to do. I said, but I know that I'm turning 65 this year. And I said, my next decade, I want to do something that I wasn't able to do when I was back in East LA because I'm no longer in East LA. And I said, I didn't plant enough seeds nationally and help Latinos who wanted to help other Latinos financially and build businesses. So we created a new concept that we just launched this year called basically Corazon Financial and Insurance Services. And I am bringing on people who want to start businesses in their communities in El Paso, Fresno, wherever they're at, in a Latino community. It could be Queens, New York. I'm going to show them how to build a business and how to use my material, my coaching material, to really offer financial advice that's not product driven, that's corazon driven, right? And I said I would have loved to start something like that. And he goes, well, why don't we do it? Let's do it. And you 40 years, everybody knows who you are now. Let's just figure this out. And so we created a company, and so I wrote the book to be able to be the tool that they will be using to be coaching. And I said, well, not everybody's going to have access to it. So I ended up writing the book. And right now, this is a hardcover book that just literally I just got my hands on it a few days ago. And it is the whole concept of how do I change your mindset to believe that you can have money? How do I change your mindset to believe that money is just a tool to live a better quality of life? Because as the pastor told me back on September 8th, 1990, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. You're not going to take anything with you. And I've also been fortunate enough to have worked with people who are in survival mode, struggle mode, stability mode, and success mode. And because I've been fortunate to work with such wealthy people, I've had people who have come to me and said, hey, I need to talk to you. And I go, what's that? I said, but just can't keep it between us. I said, what's that? And he goes, man, I make so much money now. I'm making, I have any car that I want. I have any watch that I want. I have, and he goes, I'm just not happy, man. Is this all there is? I thought when I got money, I was gonna be happy. And we all know that we all need money, right? Because people listen to this, well, yeah, I'd rather have money and have problems than have no money. And I get that part. But money is not going to make you any happier. It's not going to give you any purpose. It's not going to give you any meaning. And basically, they always say that, one of the things that you better be careful about which ladder of success you're climbing up, because you may be climbing up the wrong wall. And there's a lot of people who've made a lot of money and basically are drug addicts or commit suicide. They're just not happy. So I says, well, how do we build money intentionally to make you happy, to have meaning and purpose? So as if it's the last day of your life, you know that your life meant something here on earth. And so the whole goal was I was working with people in the body that were in this survival and struggle mode. And they just couldn't wait and when they got money, the young kids, they'd go spend it on really super expensive, crazy ass shit that, they weren't building legacy. And so what happened was that the wealth gap with all the financial literacy now, remember I said back then, there's too much financial literacy. It's now too confusing. The wealth gap among Latinos has gotten bigger and it's not gotten better. And you're going to go to every Latino conference and Latinos 4.1 trillion spending power, GDP with the fifth largest economy. And, that means crap. It doesn't mean shit, because what happens is, look at what's going on. I don't want to politicize this show, but look at what's going on with all the I streets and everything else. And it used to be growing up that the golden rule was he who has the gold, not he who has the gold. The golden rule was do unto others, you would want them to do unto you. That's the biblical golden rule. The golden rule now seems to be he who has the gold rules. So I thought, well, why don't I just push some hot buttons right now with what I'm trying to do and push some buttons right now and say, let's create a Latino economic revolution. Let's not focus on spending money. Let's focus on making money, but doing it the right way. And the right way is going to take time, and you're not going to make it overnight, and you're going to build wealth. And then we're going to talk about how do you do generational wealth, because most Latinos who leave money to their children blow it. Their inheritance is gone the very first generation. They don't even know how to handle the money because they have very weak financial foundations. And so my goal right now is I'm saying, hey, you know what? If you don't take the time to build wealth right now, after we have been in America under kind of constant attack for being brown, right? Then if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. So I think this is the best time. And so I have, under this current administration, had a lot of wind behind me. And so that's why, I started TikToking in June, because what happened of last year, because I had friends who've been here for 25, 30 years who had homes, businesses undocumented, and were being deported and were afraid of losing everything they had worked here and had kids born here. So I did one post on, hey, if you're undocumented, but you've been here for 20, 30 years, you basically build your life here and you have assets, I'm going to show you how to protect them. And I did one post, I got, I think, 220,000 likes and views, and right away, like it was the very first post. And then I started doing TikToks, and it just started building. And so I all my philosophies on TikTok, I guess they move it to Instagram as well. And that's what all of this is about. That's what started it. That's why what the book is about. It is all about mindset principles to help you build wealth and how to go from survival or struggle to significance, not success. We call it significance. Significance is using your money as a tool to make sure that you have stronger relationships, better health, generational wealth, investing in yourself and your career, in your grandchildren, and whatever you need. My goal is that I want to make sure that I'm going to show you how to create. Most Latinos tend to be very entrepreneurial most of the time, because they have to, because they're immigrants that come here. They're not going to be engineers, doctors, or lawyers. They have to start their own businesses if they're going to go be above and beyond making minimum wage. And so they don't need to create a business plan. They're already started their business. They need a business blueprint. So I wrote a book called Small Business, Big Life, because the purpose of a business is to give you more life. In fact, you're seeing it behind me here for Latinos. And I wrote that one, and I wrote one for women that was behind that one. And that book was, okay, so you're Latino, man. You started a business. You're a consultant. You're doing that. Let me just show you how to build, how to scale, how you're supposed to think about it. And again, everything for me is very mindset, because again, right now you can get a lot of tools on how to do stuff. But the problem is that if you don't have the proper mindset, you're going to end up broke. And even if you make money, Dr. Borja, I have seen people who have gotten a check for $17 million. And I knew in my head that they were going to blow it within 2 to 3 years. Well, like for that person, I was wrong. They didn't blow it in 2 or 3 years. They blew it in a year. They blew the whole 17 million in a year. I was wrong. I thought it was going to take 2 or 3 years. because I've seen it time and time again. People who make a lot of money and blow all their money, they sabotage themselves because their financial foundation is weak. And the weak is their mindset. And they have to build strong mindsets so they can grow and retain and hold on and make more money.
I love that. I love that. You said something that I wanted to have a follow-up question on. Thank you, brother. Why you mentioned the 4.1 trillion, right? The buying power, this and that, but why is there still a gap, with building generational wealth?
Because we don't have wealth. And so the thing is, we don't have wealth. And let me tell you something. Having wealth means that when you compare the assets held that are owned by an assets, again, I go back to your net worth is what you own less what you owe equals your net worth. When we take a look at what Latinos in the United States have on their net worth compared to Anglos, it's comparatively different. I mean, it's like night and day different. And the problem is that most people treat people with a lot of money different than they treat somebody who's poor. And poor people don't have the same respect. You should treat everybody the same. Everybody should be treated the same. But that's just not how it works. And so I go back to, if we had lots of money, money can create a lot of solutions to a lot of problems. Without money, you don't have a lot of solutions. Prior to Obamacare, the number one place where Latinos died in America was in emergency rooms because they didn't have health insurance. They couldn't afford health insurance. They died in emergency rooms. Without money, you're not going to be respected. I guarantee you, if we had tons and tons of money, they would be treating us differently. They wouldn't go after us. I right now, highly educated, born and raised here, been to the best schools, and I'm walking around when I'm traveling with my passport. And I'm thinking, what the hell happened? We've gone backwards here. And so I go back to, and I am well-to-do, but again, the majority of us are still struggling. They don't save. When it comes to retirement savings, we lack. We're like, outside of being also, Blacks and Latinos just don't have any money saved. And I can tell you this, even if you earn a little bit, because I've done this for 40 years now, I have clients from the hood, from the barrio, who are my clients after 40 years, who have invested with us $1.5 to $2 million. Well, how could that be? Because they just saved, they put money away, they were disciplined, they listened to us, they just did what they had to do, and they didn't overthink stuff. And so what happened is now we're working with them to create a plan to leave money to their children, to leave it to their grandchildren, not just to one generation. You have to think things through. So you have to build wealth, and wealth is about having money for retirement or financial freedom, to buy insurance, to take care of people, your family, and and I like, what does financial dignity mean to me? All right. You're driving around with a car that has bald tires and you're thinking, shit, do I go buy the tires or I have to pay the rent this month? That kind of stuff is like, that's poor, man. That's not financial dignity. Financial dignity is like, I bald tires. Shit, I'm putting my family in danger. I got to go get some new tires. You shouldn't even let them go bald. Financial dignity is as simple as, you go to a restaurant, you open up a menu and you look at the menu and you order what you want to eat that day. Not because, oh shoot, what can I afford? That's not financial dignity. Financial dignity is not having to move in when you're an adult with your children because you can't even retire because all you thought your retirement was going to be Social Security, which they're now talking about cutting in the next several years, right? That's not financial dignity. Latinos deserve better. And again, I go back to, but it's been our mindset of how we came here and how we think about money. Now, are there a lot of Latinos that are financially successful? Absolutely. But remember, the financial planning industry only goes after the top 10% of the top earners in America and the top wealthy people in America. They don't go after the bottom like 90%. And again, they're not going to, and even the lowest 20%, nobody's going to go after because it's a wholly different level that you got to deal with. But there's a big chunk of middle class America or lower class America that nobody's helping out. They don't have access to competent, ethical financial planning. And so this is what I talk about. I lay it out, man. I'm really straight when I talk about where they're getting ripped off, how the industry is ripping them off, and what they need to do. And there's a lot of industries that open up in barrios and they don't even know that they're doing the wrong thing for the people that are. That's why they're keeping them poor. And we're talking about insurance companies, we're talking about banks, we're talking about financial planning companies going to the poor communities, and they keep them poor because they're focused on product. I want people, there's a lot of people that who are willing to, who know my work, love my work. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give you my work now. I'm going to teach you how to do it. I'm going to license my work to you. You're going to be able to use my books. You're going to be able to use my my PowerPoint presentations. I'm going to do a turnkey marketing plan for you so you can make some money, so you can do good and you can do well. Right. And that's what we're looking for. Because also Latinos think that if you're going to help out your community, you shouldn't be making that much money. No, that's BS. You got to make as much money as you possibly can. That's the goal. But you also got to do good. You got to help as many people as you possibly can.
Love it. We're kind of winding down in time. What is one takeaway or final thought or one takeaway that anyone, like, let's say if they didn't take away anything the past 40 minutes, what's one that they should definitely take away from today's interview?
It's yeah, and again, you can see my passion for this, right? I mean, it's you can see my passion. Look, here's the thing. It is all about having hope. Look, if there's somebody listening to me, because I'm going to share with you, I work with a lot of Latino attorneys, doctors, lawyers, but a lot of attorneys, and I said, hey, have you done your estate plan? I know they haven't done their estate plan. Look, getting to the point where you have financial dignity in your life is just a few simple steps that have to be executed, that have to do work. Read my books, listen to me on TikTok, go on Instagram, call me, whatever you need to do. We're here to help you. I can only help the people that want to be helped, the people that feel like there are a lot of people that have lost a lot of hope. They just kind of given up. You can't give up. It's very easy. If I were 20 years old, I could tell you that this is what's going to work, but you don't know that it's going to work. I'm telling you right now, I'm turning 65 this year. I've been doing 45 years. I've got clients that have over $1 million that have never made more than $40,000, $50,000 in their life in 1 year. Okay. If you're listening to this and you want your financial life to change, go to louisbarajas.com, read my books. Okay. That's all you're going to benefit for. You do a coaching class. I mean, it's going to cost you like $240 or something. I have online coaching programs. Please do not give up hope. You have plenty of time. Also, if they're listening to us and they're in their 40s or 50s or even 60s, it's never too late. It's never too late. We've helped everyone. And again, I go back to, it's not pie in the sky stuff. It's common sense, financial planning. People who've done it for, the last 40 years. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. We know where people get ripped off. And so that's all I'm saying. Please have some hope.
Love it. Love it. Where could people, thank you so much for that. Fantastic answer.
Yeah.
Where could people find more information about the book?
Yeah, it's Louis Barajas. It's LouisBarajas.com, louisbarajas.com. If you want to see what I talk about all the time and what my life and financial philosophy is, go to my TikTok page. It's Louis Barajas 3 on TikTok, and it's just Louis Barajas on Instagram. If you are a professional and you're on LinkedIn, go to my LinkedIn and check out my background, everything else. I have a lot of people reach out to me through there. There's a lot of ways, and just Google me. You'll see that I've been doing this for a really long time, and my goal is that I just want to see Latinos build wealth. I want to see that, at the end of the day, that the golden rule is that Latinos have, we're the ones that have the money. We're the ones pushing the buttons. We're the ones in charge. We're going to be, we're already at 20% of the U.S. demographic. Dr. Borja, it's, we can make a big difference, and we can make a big voting difference this year, so the point is that go to louisbarajas.com. That's all I can say.
Love it, Louis. Fantastic interview. I enjoyed it. Man, what a great time. Thank you so much for
Dr. Borja, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it. All right.